Welcome to the Law by Leo podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Law by Leo podcast with attorney Alex Leonowicz. If you've been paying attention, you know that several Michigan cities have decriminalized psilocybin. But what does that actually mean? Is it legal? Is it still a crime? And if you're a business trying to operate in this space, what do you need to know? Well, you're in luck, because here to break all this down is Alex Leonowicz. Alex is a partner at Howard & Howard Attorneys, one of the oldest and most established business law firms in the country. He spent over 20 years in corporate law, specializing in high compliance industries like cannabis, hemp, and gaming. He built and scaled his own cannabis company from 4 employees to 250 across 4 states. So when it comes to navigating emerging and heavily regulated industries, Alex has done it both as an attorney and as an operator. So this is going to be a great conversation. Alex, good to see you.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Nice to be here. This is an exciting topic for me. It's I get a lot of phone calls on it and a lot of questions, so I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's even if you're not in this business, just as I think as a general consumer and out in Michigan and other states, it's in the news, so I think it's interesting. Let's start with the basics. Like in Michigan, where does the state currently stand on psilocybin? It's not fully legal, but it's not exactly the Wild West either, right?
Yeah, it is. It's living in the gray area, Sean, and it reminds me a lot of cannabis back in the day. But from a current standpoint, it is still illegal. So if you get caught with psilocybin or mushrooms, as we most commonly refer them to, it's a misdemeanor, punishable less than 1 year, probably a fine somewhere in around $2,000. Those are the guidelines, if you will. But what's interesting is it depends on how much you have, and then the way that you have it packaged as well. So I've seen, and I'm not a criminal attorney, I'm a business attorney, but I've seen situations in which folks that have what they view as enough for them to last a while, and are found to be in possession of it, can actually it can get bumped up to a felony charge depending on how you have it packaged, how much you have. So there's no real bright line approach in Michigan. It's very much about what you have and how you have it.
Yeah, I could see in that scenario where you suddenly appear to be distributing it in some way if you have them neatly packaged into separate envelopes or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yep.
We're hearing about cities decriminalizing psilocybin. But what does decriminalization actually mean versus legalization? Because I think those two terms get conflated.
Oh yeah, I had to. That's probably one of the top things I have to explain to folks, and it's. Let me put it this way. So decriminalization is certainly not the same as legalization. Okay. So decriminalization is basically telling law enforcement to make this of the lowest priority. So Sean, think of it like jaywalking, right? Is it still illegal? Yes. Are you getting arrested for it? Probably not. Okay. Legalization, on the other hand, is what we have with cannabis in Michigan. So it is legal to possess it. It is legal. You cannot be charged with it, provided you meet the legalization guidelines. So that's a huge distinction and a difference there.
Yeah, legalization versus decriminalization. So we're hearing about, part of the reason we're here is that, some Michigan cities have actually taken this step, right, to decriminalize.
Yep, you got it. You're using the right ones. And I think there's probably about 5 of them right now that I'm aware of. So Ann Arbor's being one of them, Detroit, Hazel Park, Ferndale, and I think Ypsilanti is the last. Mm-hmm. But again, that is decriminalization, and that's allowed for the personal use only.
Right.
So in other words, if you're walking around with it and you get stopped, it's the lowest priority. One thing to keep in mind too on this is you got to think about that applies to that city only. We'll touch on this in a little bit, but that does not mean the state police are bound by the same thing. Does not mean that the county sheriffs are bound by that. So you can see how you can find yourself in some hot water the minute you leave Ann Arbor or Ypsilanti or any of those cities that have allowed it so far.
Right. I mean, and you mentioned cannabis, and I think, that cannabis is much further ahead nationally in legalization and what have you, but it's state by state, and you've got these, you just mentioned the different counties, different sheriffs, different jurisdictions, and the big one, of course, is federal law versus state law when it comes to controlled substances, right? So talk about that for a minute. Where is psilocybin in this federally?
So it's still Schedule 1.
Okay.
So much like cannabis for now, and heroin and LSD, that's how they're looking at it. And what that means is there's very high likelihood of abuse with little to unknown medical usage for that. One interesting thing that we're seeing and that I would draw some attention to, so the DEA every year gets a set amount of drugs, believe it or not, to use for experimental educational purposes, research purposes. And what's interesting with psilocybin in 2026 is that they've actually upped the grams that they receive every year from 30,000 grams to 50,000 grams. Now, why is that, right? Most people ask, well, maybe they just want more on hand or somebody's using it. No, I think the trend there is they're utilizing it more for research purposes. Wow. And you're seeing a wider increase or more research going into that.
The whole research thing is interesting to me because, I mean, again, in the news, I'm sure in the national news, so I'm sure you've seen it, but certainly in Michigan, I'm guessing as well. But, the amount of research that is going into some of these, former, Schedule 1 or current Schedule 1 drugs that are, for medicinal purposes and therapeutic purposes and PTSD and depression and also addiction, like all these things. So it's super exciting, and the idea that the DEA might be increasing their activity. I mean, that's just a positive sign, it seems to me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think it'll be interesting, and you saw a similar trend with cannabis as well. Yeah. You saw an uptick in the amount that they had, so it looks and feels a lot like that.
Yeah, that's going back what? Would you say we're in about the same place? Like, what are we, like 10 or 15 years ago, cannabis was where we are with these drugs?
Yeah, it feels that way with psilocybin. You see a lot of similarities. So you see the decriminalization in certain cities. So if you're familiar with Michigan, Ann Arbor used to have its annual hash bash, right? Where it was permitted.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they decriminalized it in that city, just like psilocybin they're doing today. You would see certain states start to lead the charge in terms of decriminalization or legalization, and it's followed by a patchwork. And then on top of it all, you have the Fed saying, absolutely not, it's completely illegal. So it looks and feels very similar to cannabis back in the day. So it is following a similar trajectory, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I mean, law is so much based on precedent, right? And so the idea that, cannabis has created a template, a framework, for businesses to reflect on and build from, but also, industries, but then also, of course, the law, right? In terms of, the law always sort of catches up eventually.
Yeah.
Is there anything going on with the Michigan legislature right now that is going to impact this conversation?
Yeah. There's a bill presently in the Senate, and what it's looking to do is not legalize like cannabis yet, but they are looking at the utilization of psilocybin for limited purposes. Okay, and that limited purpose is to help treat PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. So that is presently before the House right now. I believe it's bipartisan. It had some support on both sides. The other thing as well is we saw a ballot initiative at the last election. Now, it failed, right? Didn't make the ballot. You couldn't vote on it. But you got to remember that cannabis did as well. There was a lot of times that we tried to get it on the ballot and it didn't make it there. And most people think, well, it just goes away. That's not true. Groups get smarter. They go out and get more signatures. They get more attorneys to help them draft the language,
Yeah.
and eventually you'll likely see it on the Michigan ballot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it is just comes down to awareness across, for the general public. I mean, of course, you've got to, dot your I's and cross your T's legally, but, it just takes a while for the culture to catch up to some of this stuff. So it's encouraging no matter what. I'm wondering about, I mean, I mentioned I'm currently sitting in California. I used to live in the Northwest, in Washington, Oregon adjacent. Colorado is another state that comes to mind in terms of having been, eventually liberalized, been on the forefront, on some of this stuff. Is Michigan in that group or right behind it or further? Are there other states, do you think they're ahead of Michigan? What's your take?
Yeah, I think Oregon is like, just like cannabis is notoriously led the charge on this. So in Oregon, you have the utilization of psilocybin, but in a controlled setting. So basically, they allow you to use mushrooms, but you have to go to a certain center. They administer the dose for you, and then they watch you and monitor you throughout the process. So I believe that was maybe 2023 is when we saw Oregon move that way. Colorado's another interesting one. So you have two really tracks in Colorado. You have the decriminalization, which again doesn't make it legal, doesn't mean they can't still write you up for it, but they do move it down. But that is only for possession and cultivation, not for the sale of it. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And then they also have treatment centers as well. So they're kind of doing both, with the same real backbone being the medical usage. I think a lot of states are going to start with looking at it from a medical standpoint first, much before you see like a recreational usage permitted. Yeah.
Well, they have the history of hallucinogens and that sort of thing is interesting, right? In terms of how many decades ago there was insight into the therapeutic potential of these compounds, and then they kind of went away, and war on drugs, that's another podcast, but the idea that it's coming back to the fore is a good thing. Let's, for a minute here, we got people listening, consumer, some guy out there thinking about purchasing, what do they need to know?
Again, the difference between decriminalization and legalization. So again, we're going back to Michigan here because that's where I'm at today. Right. But with decriminalization, yes, you could possess it in a city like Ann Arbor, okay? But the minute you leave that city and move to another area, you are just as likely, there are no protections there at all. Same goes for the state police, right? If the state police wanted to come in to Ann Arbor and start writing people up and busting them for mushrooms, absolutely. They're not subject to that decriminalization. Right. Same thing for the sheriff's departments as well. Like, they don't have to abide by that. So, for consumers looking at that, be wary. Again, it's similar to cannabis back in the day. Certain spots you might get away with it, but it's still subject to the higher ups, and then especially on the federal level as well.
Right.
Last thing too, Sean, is like, and this is more practical, is like a drug charge is a serious thing on your offense. So whether you're a professional or any sort of job, like, those things can leave stains and be, while there's more cultural acceptance to it today, they still can have a ripple effect throughout your life. So
yeah,
if you are going to do it, be in one of those safe spots as much as you can, and then just be aware of what the rules are and where they apply.
I know you work with businesses. I mean, you've been in highly regulated industries. You were in the cannabis industry, and now you're working with businesses in these, high compliance industries. So there's a business owner out there. They're operating right now in Michigan, and they're selling psilocybin products, right? I guess it depends on where they are, et cetera. But, what's the legal exposure there?
Yeah, so remember that decriminalization is mainly for personal possession, meaning if you got it on you and you get stopped, they're less likely to prosecute you for that. That's not the same for distribution. So listen, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I love cutting new edge industries. That's just how I'm built and wired. So, but you got to remember, like, the sale of psilocybin or any other Schedule I drug is a felony. So I use the analogy, Sean, it's kind of like building your house on somebody else's property. Like, could you do it? Sure, you could do it until they come on and realize that you're doing it. So it is a very high risk type thing. So you'll see some people do it and maybe they get away with it and they'll make a boatload of money. And then there's others that will be, federally or state indicted. So it is a very risky business still to sell on the business side of things.
Yeah. Well, we've just got a couple of minutes left here, and I just want to add on to that and bring it back to your practice and your business. You run a fractional general counsel practice at Howard and Howard. And so for businesses, small business owners or entrepreneurs out there that are listening, explain what that is briefly, because then they can reach out if it makes sense.
Absolutely. So let me put it this way. There's a lot of businesses that need a full-time general counsel, but can't afford it. A general counsel is an expensive position to have, anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 plus equity. And using outside firms as well is also very expensive and unpredictable in pricing. So a fractional general counsel is designed to address both of those issues. It gives you a general counsel-minded attorney at a fraction of the cost with predictable flat rate billing. So you get a monthly rate, you get to utilize those hours, and then the nice part is it doesn't necessarily include the telephone or the email conversations. I know a lot of clients that don't call their attorney because they're fearful of that costing them money or knowing that the clock is running. And fractional general counsel eliminates all of those, and it's come from being both in the private practice world and being a business owner. So I used to send the bills out to clients, and then I was also the one opening them.
Yeah,
so
paying them,
taking that into consideration. That's how this model really got born.
I love it. Well, listen, man, we're out of time for now, but thanks for sharing your expertise. Thanks for being on the show, and I look forward to talking again in the future.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Law by Leo podcast. In 2026, the right legal strategy isn't just about protection, it's about growth. So if you enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe. Maybe share a link with someone you know out there in the business world. To streamline your compliance and secure your next big move, visit Alex and his team at the website lawbyleo.com. I'm Sean O'Connor, and look forward to a future conversation. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.